Back in 1998, I got my first gaming console, which was a Sega Genesis, and I wanted to share with you 10 of my favorite Sega games of all time. Games that I'm always going to remember, always going to have fond memories of, and really would love to dive back into today. A lot of times we have the ability to do this, and I would recommend that you try all of these 10 games for Sega. The first game from today's list is a title called Altered Beast. This one is where you are a fighter making your way through the stages, taking down beasts along the way. And as you power yourself up, you turn into a beast yourself so you could take down the final boss of each of the stages. You'll notice as you progress through the game, you take down the blue wolves and you get the upgrade globes that allow you to progress further throughout the game and strengthen your power. Once you get that third globe, you turn into a beast, and then you have the amazing powers yourself to help you easier take down the final bosses. There are many different characters that you could turn into, or I should say beasts, and the final bosses are nothing crazy hard, but there was something about this game that was just amazing. This was the first ever game to launch on Sega Genesis and actually came with the console back in 1988 when you purchased it. I actually picked up the Sega Genesis on the first day of its release, and Altered Beast is a title that I was playing for years. Next on the list is a game called Super Thunderblade, where you play as a helicopter and have to make your way into the screen. Inside of this one, you would be in different cities or even in different desert lands, trying to take down all of the enemies, ground and air, that approach you. The cool thing about this game were the amazing graphics. And I know it's kind of funny to say that looking at this now, but back then, these were very good graphics compared to what you would get on the Nintendo. Also notice that in this title, you're actually heading into the screen. This was not a platformer style game, but more of a 3D experience, one that made you feel like you were part of this helicopter. As you progress through the game, you would encounter big bosses that you would need to take down. This was the ending of each stage and pretty standard across all titles on Sega Genesis. Everything had a stage to get through and a boss to take down at the end of that stage. This game was something that was extremely fun, and I was not an aviation enthusiast or anything like that. I just really enjoyed Super Thunderblade, one of the best helicopter games that I've still played to this day. Next on the list is Super Hang-On, a motorcycle racing game. This game was incredible because of its stunning graphics, and again, like Super Thunderblade, because of its taking you into the screen. This is no Excite Bike when you're going from left to right, but here you're going into the actual race. Another experience making you feel like you're part of the game. This is something that Sega Genesis did really well, and what kind of made it stand out beyond what was being done on Nintendo at the same time. This game was really just a lot of fun. You had different music you could choose to play when you were racing, the graphics were on point for its time, and the gameplay was just super exciting. It really made you feel like you were playing something special when you played this one. Coming in at number 4, we have a title called Esad, one of my favorite games of all time, where you play as a police officer that slowly turns himself into a robot. And no, I'm not talking about RoboCop. This is a very, very different experience. You start out in the stages as a simple police officer with a pistol, and you have to make your way through this platformer, but that is not the most exciting part of the game. Things really get exciting when you transform into a robot with a bunch of different weapons and the ability to fly through the map. This is what makes this game extremely special and very different from others. Notice we're starting with a normal weapon that can be upgraded over time. Still a platformer style game, but something that was really just different than any others we'd seen at the time. This one was super fun and allowed you to get different weapons. Notice we just picked up one called PC, one of the ones that's charge upable and can give you a nice fireball that takes down enemies. Such a great title here that also has some great bosses. Like all platformers, as you get towards the end of each round, you do encounter different big bosses, and here you'd have to utilize all of your different attacks, all your different shots to take down these enemies. And it was really cool that you were able to cycle your way through all of your different types of shooting. It wasn't just like a Contra game where you had a different style of shooting and that was all you got. Here, you were actually able to switch between the two, which was obviously something new and something special. Really a solid game, and one that I actually used to play on the joystick for Sega Genesis, something that most people didn't even know existed. Alright, and Sonic the Hedgehog has to be on today's list. This is one of the iconic titles from Sega Genesis. It was the Mario of Sega. Remember, Sega had the whole badass look. It made you feel like you were playing something that was just rough cut and, you know, a little bit rough around the edges, a darker style of gaming. And Sonic had that attitude. The graphics here were also incredible, and the speed that the game offered was something that had never been seen before on any console. It really was a great game to play. Now, let's be honest, Sonic was not my favorite game of all time, but it was something that took a lot of my time to play because it was a lot of fun and I never put the thing down. But the speed of Sonic and the soaring abilities through the skies are really what made this one stand out. Plus, it became the next game to be sold with the Sega Genesis itself. Altered Beast took a backseat and Sonic took over. And it was always fun when you would encounter the boss at the end of each stage, making another attempt to take down this fast, attitude-ridden hedgehog. Always a great experience, colors were awesome, and I mean, Sonic the Hedgehog is still one of the most popular games to this day. Now here is a game that I can guarantee you have never heard of, and it's called Decap Attack, where you play as a mummy that can throw his head, and his name is Chuck D. Head. This is a really quirky platformer, but also extremely addicting and a ton of fun. Obviously, you get yourself a head and you could chuck this thing, and hence his name, and throw it at enemies, and then it would return to you kind of like a boomerang. You also have a regular shot of an eyeball that comes out of your belly and takes down enemies as well. Also allowing you to float through the air, you have a nice twinkle foot ability that makes you have a little bit of finesse as you make your way through the map. It really was just a funny and quirky experience to play here, and one that I played quite a bit of. It really was an amazing game that was just, I mean, let's be honest, this was probably not one of the most popular games on Sega Genesis, but is one of the ones that I remember the most and that I will always look at as a game that I had a lot of time enjoying, a lot of fun. And then there was Alex Kidd, where you play as Alex, the kid, who's just trying to get his way through some mysteries and really having a lot of fun while doing it. This was a platformer where you went through and unlocked a whole bunch of different stuff along the way, different weapons, and when you can get the shooting ability like you see right here, you knew you were golden to make your way through the game. This one was also amazingly fun and had a whole mechanic where you had to do rock, paper, scissors to unlock new elements inside of the game. Very simplistic looking game here, but one that for some reason took up a lot of my time. I really enjoyed playing this one, and if it were available for me to play today, I probably would give this one another go. It's one that doesn't look to be much, but actually is quite exciting. Let me show you a little bit of the whole rock, paper, scissors mechanic. Once you get enough gold, you can bid for different items. As you can see right here, we're bidding for a pogo stick, and yes, we want to participate. Very easy, because this is how you unlock new things that you could use inside of the game, and who doesn't like bouncing around on the scene? Look at that, we won right there. We've got the pogo stick, we spent the money, and now we can bounce. With the super simple equip system, you're able to jump easily from many of the different things that you have, and it allows you to get to different areas on the map. And as you can see, right from that, we got the 100 that we spent right there on the pogo stick back, and it allows us to just have another cool item in our bag. Here's one that you probably never heard of. This one called Golden Axe, 1 or 2 players. Inside of this title, you have 3 character classes you could choose to play, all of which have pretty similar mechanics inside of the game, but are a lot of fun to play. The fighting mechanic was something new here, where it was a platformer style, but you can go back and forth on the map, a new feature that we really hadn't seen before the Sega Genesis. Here you have a very standard attack, some nice type of power attacks, and magic attacks as well. You'd also encounter a bunch of beasts, and then you could ride those beasts and use them against the enemies that you have to fight. Really just a fun mechanic. I fondly remember getting to the point in the game where you could reach the dragons. The dragons were an enemy that you would have to fight, but then you could mount and use against all of your opponents. This was one of the more powerful things that you could get inside of the game, and it's always fun to set them ablaze at their feet with this dragon fire and really just allow you to progress through the game a little bit further because you had that type of power beneath you. Now, the first ever Mortal Kombat released in 1993 on the Sega Genesis, and this took the gaming world by storm. With a roster of iconic characters and graphics that had been unmatched prior to this game was ready and primed to be something that would last for decades on platforms. I remember playing this game and realizing, wow, this is brutal. This is just, there's blood, it's gory, the graphics look so real. I mean, those were the thoughts that went through my head back in 1993 when I was playing this game. This broke the whole gaming world as far as how brutal gaming could be. And being able to fight against many different characters and play as all of those characters as well was really quite amazing. Now, there were other games out like Street Fighter, etc., but Mortal Kombat just did something different. And although it's not my favorite fighting game, it's one that really did stand out from Sega Genesis. And this, if you've never played Mortal Kombat, the first original, it's a must play. Now, everyone knows the game Contra on Nintendo, but no one ever gives credit to Merks. Merks is a Contra-style game, but better. Not only is it a platformer back and forth style, but it allows you to fight into the game, just like we saw from some of the games earlier on in today's video. In addition to that, there also were just better weapons than you would see in Contra that were more brutal, bigger, with bigger explosions. Some of the weapons that we loved from Contra we did see here as well, like the spread weapon or just the original flame burst weapons, but this was a cool game because of how you went into the game. It wasn't a side to side, it was a north and south style game that really was different from any other thing we've played. I also played this one quite a bit in the arcade as well and have some fond memories of that experience. And then there was Ghouls and Ghosts, which was not only on the Sega Genesis, but it's where I played it and where I fell in love with it. This was another game that launched back in 1988, and it was really just a fun one. You played as a knight that was a little bit goofy, and you had to go through the stages fighting the undead as they arose from the ground or came down from the skies. You had a bunch of different weapons that you could unlock and use. Some were great and others were not so great. It was just an addicting platform that really would have you coming and wanting to get further, and I believe there's an enemy inside of that carrot, and yes, there is. Check that out. See, my memory served me well. I remember just playing this one for hours, trying to get further and further, deeper and deeper into the game, and I also do recall beating this game multiple times. It was one that after I'd beat it, I would come back and play for more because it was just that fun of a title. This was probably one of the worst attacks that the game had to offer, in my opinion. I always struggled with trying to be effective with it. But when you get that golden armor, you feel like the man and you really allow yourself to take some extra damage and progress further into the game. And like all platformers that we know and love, you eventually come to that final boss. A final boss that's standard across all games that you find in the Sega Genesis. These ones were really cool though, not the most difficult to get through, although some of them did have some mechanics that you had to get used to. A really great fun title right here that is just a classic. The Revenge of Shobi, one of the best ninja games ever to be made on the Sega Genesis. This game was just so much fun. At this point in time, at these days and ages, everyone wanted to be a ninja, and being able to move through this game, throwing your shurikens, was just an incredible experience. I absolutely love this game, and it further made me a determined potential ninja in my own life, and we could kind of live through that experience here inside of the game. And for the one sports game on today's list, we have the best of all time, John Madden Football 93, which actually released back in 1992. This was the beginning of football or even sports games at all for me on a gaming console. This game was simplistic at best, and it was really just a great, enjoyable experience. A game that you really only needed a few plays to be successful in, but really was so much fun and so competitive. With that being said, you also had the feeling that the game looked like the real players on TV. That shows you what we were coming from with the gaming generations before this one. Just such a great game that really enabled people to understand the game of football and learn how to play call and even understand what the plays are in general. Whether you were choosing your plays on offense or picking what you're going to be doing on defense, you really were able to get a good handle on the game and enjoy your experience. And the plays were just so brutal, the throws were so realistic, and the defense was unstoppable. If you guys want to see more top 10 lists, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I'm giving you lists of top 10 games every single day. I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video.